I'm not trying to project an image. I just am a serious news person, and I would hope that that's what comes across. You know, I'm a journalist, and that's the way I think of myself. And I assume that that is what I'm trying to get across to the viewer. I don't try to project an image different from what I believe I am. I believe I'm a serious news person. I do those kinds of stories at every opportunity. And I have every reason to believe that's how I come across. You know, I may be very wrong. You know, somebody may think I'm a real twit. I don't know.
You tune into a news program for information, not entertainment. If you want entertainment, then you can watch the variety shows, watch Johnny Carson and the like. To me, it's primarily information.
They are getting information. They're getting a headline service. They're getting information in the raw. They're getting the same thing that you could get by watching cable TV, those little, you know, where it prints out the wire service stories. They're getting a headline service. To that degree, it has minimal value. But they're not getting news in any real meaningful form.
I don't want to mislead you. I think in some ways television news has been too surface, and I think that's a reasonable criticism.
Someone doesn't take time out to rewrite it out of the paper, it's not in the air.
Is that how a lot of the stories are written?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
rewrites?
Yeah, and there's too much of that goes on. Too much rewrite and following up newspaper clipping. They put newspaper stories to film.
Out of a half-hour show, we have about 15 minutes for news, you know, for everything, you know, national, international, local, you know, what have you. It's not a lot of time. So you have to make some fairly hard and firm decisions, you know, about what's going to go into that show. And so if there is a meeting of the sewer authority, unless it's a major story, we just don't cover it. We know the newspapers will cover those stories. Television does a better job covering certain kinds of news stories than any other medium. That's a fact. There are certain kinds of stories that television does a lousy job of covering. And those are the kinds of stories we try to stay away from.
One of the cardinal rules of consultants is that people don't care very much about politics. That's one of the things that consultants nationwide tell people. Like I said, there's the number of things that don't play. See, politics doesn't play because it takes explanation of infighting. You practically have to build a chart to show people who's what.
I hate political coverage. But yes, I would think that, for instance, Hegedus would probably do more political coverage. He's very fine at that. But they do take some time. They're non-visual stories as a rule. They often take, a lot of times you end up with people who will talk to you but will not talk on camera. That doesn't make for good TV.
I think that anything that you do on television has to relate to the people watching. And very often the people watching do not care about some of the minute infighting that goes on. And traditionally, City Hall reporters have focused on those things, and people cannot identify, they don't know what it means to them. And if it doesn't mean anything to them, if you truly can't make it relate, then you should not cover it.
Because they're boring. Because people fall asleep, and because they will not watch you. And therefore your ratings will go down, and therefore my kids will not get through college. I won't be able to pay their tuition.
I think the public suffers as a whole from its own taste more than anything else. It watches. What it watches tells you something about the viewer, doesn't it?
Certainly.
Do you think if the viewer wanted more political coverage, they would watch the stations that they do? I don't. I think if they wanted more political coverage, they'd ask for it, personally. And I also think that they wouldn't watch the blood and guts stuff if they didn't like it.
Topping tonight's Eyewitness News, a story of 13 fishermen trapped on a Lake Erie ice floe, and the Skies 7 helicopter plays a key role in their rescue. Susan Banks has the story.
A call from Evans Police telling Eyewitness News they needed our help to find some fishermen in danger. Mobilized Sky 7 this morning. Pilot Tom Savage and photographer Dick Leathers rushed to the scene off the Lake Erie shoreline near Sturgeon Point in Angola. They quickly spotted the stranded fishermen and relayed their location back to our newsroom, where assignment editor Nancy Sanders helped guide a Coast Guard helicopter to the area.
Channel 7's handling of the ice rescue of the 13 fishermen from the lake was the most disgusting thing I have ever seen in television, period. I was embarrassed as a Buffalo television broadcast journalist to share an airwave, with that kind of garbage. It was embarrassing not just from its inaccuracies, it was absolutely inaccurate. They claimed to have located the fishermen who were never out of sight and were never lost. They claimed to have coordinated the Coast Guard helicopters, which needed no coordination from them, which had already been coordinated by the proper authorities. It was a bit that was done only for impression of the public, to convince the public that Sky 7 was just a remarkable device that we just couldn't live without. And good heavens, even the Coast Guard pales by comparison to that Little Bell helicopter. Do you know there were 2 Coast Guardsmen who rowed out in a little boat, rowed out in the lake in a little boat, just to make sure those 13 people would have a boat there, just in case everything went wrong. They were never even mentioned on Channel 7 News, because if they had mentioned them, how could they have located? How could they have spearheaded the effort? Where did those 2 guys come from? Were there already? Because the authorities were already on top of the whole thing. They didn't need any help from us. We were there to cover the story. And for 7 to claim that they did it is bull.
Channel 7 was there. All they did was they flew around they were there when we got there, and they were flying around. And then while we were rescuing the people off the ice, they landed their helicopter on the ice, dropped off a cameraman, and filmed while we were taking these people off the ice. And then that was it.
So would you say that they did not coordinate the rescue?
No, they did not coordinate the rescue.
They did not locate the fishermen?
No, they didn't. They might have done it, but they were already located safely by other fishermen and Town of Evans police before they got there.
Only a few hours after the ice first broke away from the main body of ice closer to shore, the floe is almost too far away to be seen. In other words, those men out there were rescued none too soon, thanks to the quick work of the Coast Guard, the National Guard, and in part to our own Sky 7.
I think the public in Buffalo should know what kind of broadcasters they are, that they would try to take credit from people who risk their lives to save people simply for some public relations advantage. That's all it was. It was disgusting.
Well, we were called on by the Coast Guard to help them out. It was an essential part of the story.
Yeah,
The fact that it is promotional, fine. Certainly nothing wrong with that.
Well, I mean, news is partly man's inhumanity to man, We are not talking about Captain Kangaroo.
He was milked for everything it was worth. Do you think that that's fitting for news?
Fitting?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's fitting. I only know what's fitting for eyewitness news. Again, I can't speak for channels 2 or 4, except to say that they've copied everything we've done in the last 15 years. So we must be doing something right.
We've been #1 for so long that people actually call us sometimes before they call the police. Can you imagine? It's the truth.
Well, if you're not #1, you'll be out of a job. It's that simple. Or out of business.
Maybe the viewer in this town has to be re-educated to some extent. Maybe all the viewer has been given here is something that... See, I don't know, we could all be wrong. We're all assuming that the viewer should want more political coverage, more coverage concerning his taxes, more coverage concerning the way his government is run, the way his schools are run. We assume that. I take it from your questions that you assume that. We may be wrong,
This city is not bad, depressing as it is to think about. This city, the newscasts in this city are better than they are in a lot of major towns and a lot of major places. They're not as good as they are in some places, but believe me, we do better than certain Los Angeles stations I've seen. We do better than certain New York stations I've seen. I mean, the whole area of TV news is one that I think ought to be turned upside down and shaken within an inch of its life. But short of doing that, which isn't, comes the revolution. The revolution ain't going to happen. So forget the revolution. Just looking at it for what is, looking at the reality of the situation, Buffalo newscasts are better than they are in most towns. Shocking and depressing as it is.
We do not have, as a responsibility, the correction of public apathy. That's not our responsibility.
What is your responsibility?
Our responsibility is to report what is going on to the best of our ability in using our best journalistic judgments.
How do you assess what the public wants?
Oh, we hear all the time. We have our ear to the public all the time. We have an eye in everyone's home daily. They let us know what they think. We get a considerable amount of mail, considerable phone calls. We do a great deal of research in terms of what the public wants, and the best indication that we are delivering what the public wants is that we have consistently been the most popular, most viewed, most cared about news department in Buffalo for maybe 10 years.
Now, if all of this sounds like we're in the business of selling a news program, we are. We are in the business of selling a news program because, boy, the other guys are out there on the marketplace selling too. They sure are. And from our standpoint here in the newsroom, you just come in every day, you know, and try to do the best job you can in terms of killing the competition.
We're in business. This is a business. If I don't have a profitable bottom line,
It's profit. They look at the bottom line.
Their first concern usually is the bottom line.
The bottom line in all of this, they would all fall under the heading of being preoccupied with making as big a profit as they possibly can. The bottom line. The bottom line.
The bottom line of all this is you should read a lot. You should not watch so much TV. You should read more. Everybody read, because it's better for you. It's good for your head. Feed your head, as the Dormouse said.
Okay, pull back camera
Yeah,
two.
sure is.
Stand by to roll credits. Roll credits.
You're right. I'll tell you, it's done wonders for me.
Feel free to downstream,
You can get an
Rock and roll.
Okay, stand by to change. Change.
Henry, get the position where you're watch out, but yeah, get in there in a hurry. Move up closer.
Fade out.
Burn what you wouldn't believe.
Fade in. Stand by to fade to black.
As far as you can get, Henry.